A couple of announcements to begin with. You may have seen in the bulletin an MENPRAH. For the academics among you you may be discovering whether that is a Phoenician or 19th dynasty Egyptian word. For those of you who are practical, said Claus doesn't know what he was doing and pressed an O instead of a P instead of an O on the keyboard. Let me share with you those who said that Claus didn't know what he was doing and pressed a P instead of an O. Win. Clang, clang, you win. However, if one of you are right and it turns out to be ancient Phoenician, I will absolutely eat somebody's hat. Okay, I want you all today to mention, to see down, and Gary has joined us. Gary is a close friend of Chet. Remember, Chet was with us for many, many, many months, and he passed away, and we did a memorial service on Zoom, and several of his friends have kept in touch. So Gary asked to join along with us this morning, and he is here. It's a long, distinguished career himself, and we welcome Gary to our ragtag lot. Okay, you'll notice we've been wearing blue. Once upon a time in Christianity, in the northern part of Christianity, the Christians were wearing in Advent, those who celebrated Advent, dark purple. For some reason, in northern Christianity, whole, dark, penance, bad, and colors represented that. Rather than joyful, we're waiting and exciting, no, we're deep in penance and you wore purple. In the 1980s, liberal Protestants decided this has got to go and decided we would be wearing blue. Some Eastern Orthodox churches wear blue and up the beat. This is a kind of a darker blue, but it has planets on it to remind us that we are part of a much, much greater part than just our own solar system, but we are tons of solar systems, tons of galaxies. In fact, the Euclid telescope was just sent up, and there's a Perseus galaxy system. We didn't realize this. There are 1,000 galaxies in front of the system and hundreds of thousands of galaxies behind the system that we had no idea about. So I'm just guessing that we have a multiverse. So this is to remind us we are more than what we think we are as we celebrate again, gathering together. Okay, holiday pictures. Let's have some more holiday pictures. Rowena, send us a picture of your dragon. We don't have a picture of your dragon. The rest of you, send us pictures wherever you are, whatever moment you have, send us some pictures. Let's flood it with pictures. Just put up on the weekly. Next Sunday, we have 2 services for the first time since I can ever remember. And guess what? They are totally different. We are totally, totally different. 11 o'clock is going to be a regular service with all kinds of Christmas music. And 6:30 is a hybrid service. We meet in person at Aureli's and at Zoom. It's both. 6:30 is lessons and carols. No preaching, no sermons, no shares, just sitting back and listening to ancient readings and just all kinds of beautiful music. So next Sunday we have a share in which I'm going to be mentioning Mick Jagger, of all people. Yes, as you would expect. Mentioning Ignaz Schmemmelweis, who you might never have heard of, but you're probably alive because of him. And be mentioning some other people you've never heard of, and probably when I finish, you're glad you've never heard of them. So yes, it will be a wild next Sunday at 11 o'clock, and then 6:30 lessons and carols. Finally, let me ask you all if you can remember a little extra for us this month. We will be putting together a budget. We do this backwards to see what we've received for gifts up through December. And then the board takes a look at what money has come in, and then we plan a budget around that a little bit differently than other people do. We try to stick within what we've got. And so far, we have been very, very lucky to be able to do that. So one more time, let's say who's here today, Judy and Rick. Andrea, and the thing will soon be here. Gary, you don't know what the thing is. You will see what the thing is, I have no doubt. This thing is enormous. It will land in front of Andrea, and you may see Andrea, you may not, but you will see what looks like the Norwegian forest in black hair. It's a Norwegian forest cat. Digit Grimmy is our tech person. Pat Sullivan from New York, Forest Hills, Mary Grimmy, mother of Digit, Pat can care here, Maureen Sullivan, and two of the people in her house, Bobby Vance from Kissimmee, will be talking about Kwanzaa. Rowena Wallach's going to share a couple of comments about the menorah. We don't light it, a mistake that I made. Hanukkah's over, but she's going to share some more info about the menorah. Felix Becerra on the board. His husband had a birthday Friday. Pam is from Forest Hills as well. Barbara is from here. Barbara I met years and years ago. Her husband was my first chair in arts and philosophy. Kay Schweitzer is with us. Cecilia Lissandro from in town. Kay is 10 miles west of Merritt Island. Danny Sorkin is also from New York. Chris Diaz from northern Miami. Sarah from the coast of Alabama. Nick Osterman's mom. Gary Messer is out, I think in Wisconsin, but I may be wrong. Cindy and Larry Deach from Port Orange, and Tom and Gail Besaw from Port Orange. So welcome to you all for Zoom. One last thing, the weather has been rude. We have been swamped with storms for 4 days, and now the sun just arrived like, hello, everybody, how are you? Is that rude or what? Merry Christmas. Before we begin then with the introit, you're on, Rowena. Share a little bit, just a few minutes, a quick couple of minutes, if you about some information about the menorah we may never know. Rowena, you're on. Rowena, you got to unmute.
Okay, look.
2 minutes, go ahead.
Oh, okay. All right, so 2 minutes? All right. So everybody thinks that Hanukkah is the original story where the Greeks invaded Judah and they suppressed the Jews. They wouldn't let them celebrate their religion. And then the plucky Jews ran into the hills and killed all the Syrians. And then it is said that they rededicated the temple and there's a little light that shone 8 days instead of one. And that's the miracle. No, it's not. What I found, because it always bothered me about this 1 day, 8 day thing. I'm going to keep it really cool. Are you timing me? So the difference between the Syrians and the Jews was the way they approached the holiness, which is what they were fighting about. The Syrians believed that wisdom was something external and not intended to have any effect on one's behavior, but the Jews believed achieving wisdom was through integrating the Torah and the behavior into their life. And life means observing all 613 laws. And they had everything from laws on circumcision, sex, marriage, food, clothing, menstruation, forbidden adultery, etc., etc. The Jewish way of life was Orthodox Judaism. There was nothing else. So what actually happened was the Jews were ruled for quite a while by Antiochus, that's the ruler's father and grandfather, but Antiochus was crazy, and so he lost a battle, but he was so pissed off. He went into Jerusalem and he started attacking the Jews. So the Jews, again, fought them back. It's the Maccabees. But here's the thing. They didn't run out and dedicate the temple and do the lights. They had to wait. And what they did was they took there's another festival called Sukkot, which you celebrate for 8 days. That's where you get the 8 days for Hanukkah. The rededication involved turning on the lights. It was supposed to provide enough light for a single day, but it continued to burn for 8 days. Sukkot, a total of 8 days, including the dedication, has the same number of candles. That's why Hanukkah is it's a delayed Sukkot. They couldn't get out of their caves to celebrate Sukkot, which was in the autumn. So when winter came along, they wrote a letter to everyone saying, hey, we're going to celebrate Sukkot. We're just going to call it Hanukkah. There's even notes. The Hanukkah, the Maccabees, those are the people who fought the Syrians, have stuff where they actually have letters of people celebrating Sukkot way before the Syrians came and oppressed them. Now, the other thing is that, this is good. If you've got Orthodox Judaism and somebody comes along and says, hey, we've got this funky new way to live. You don't have to be circumcised. You don't have to observe. It's kind of like liberal Judaism, but they didn't have it back then. And so these people went to the king. We want to be Greek. We want to have a gymnasium. And so the king built a gymnasium and removed the marks of the covenant and everything else. And he made the Jews stand up and publicly disassociate themselves with God, Hashem, and their way of living. That's what pissed them off. Also, he took the temple and dedicated it to Zeus of all people. So that really pissed them off. So they went away and they fought and they fought and they fought. And finally, King Antiochus withdrew his troops and they went back in. And of course, they ruined the temple. And they did apparently, no, they don't even think that the oil was part of the miracle because the oil came in many years after Hanukkah, which is really cool. You can Google this if I'm not making sense. It says that Hanukkah was actually a belated celebration of Sukkot that happens in autumn. And now the only thing is that Sukkot went back from being Hanukkah that year to Sukkot, which happens in the fall. It's really messed up. Go and look it up because it took me a while to figure out what's going on with it. But it was not the lights. It's not the eight. It didn't happen. The miracle is that they kept going and fighting and fighting and fighting, and they won. Now here's my menorah. Can you see it? That's the Wallach menorah. Now, what I just learned this morning is that the menorah is 9 branches, but the shamash is the day it took for the oil that was supposed to light. So the middle, this is the day that they expected the oil to last. And all of these are the 8 nights that it actually kept on burning. Ta-da!
Okay, one last thing. For those of you who don't know what Sukkot is, Sukkot was the first gathering, first planting, and a big celebration of the gathering in the promised land. When you came into the land of Canaan, you had your first planting, your first crops. And so you big celebrated the crops. And so you'll see a lot of times on temples, wait a minute, Marina, let me finish. A lot of times you'll see temples here in the fall with booths out front. It'll be a festival of booths in which you celebrate the ingathering, and it takes several days. Yes, Rowena.
Thank you. Actually, the 3 main festivals are named after the patriarchs of Israel. Yeah, one of them was, I don't remember his name, but he took his followers into a field and of Sukkot. They named it Sukkot, but it's not necessarily the buildings because in Hebrew you have all different meanings. So it could just mean home. So everything is very tricky. So what you believe, what people tell you traditionally, it ain't necessarily so. Thank you.
She definitely belongs here. Our introit. Our introit is a classic for Advent, Veni, Veni, Emmanuel. One of the things that Rowena did for us is to remind us how everything is not as neatly boxed up as sometimes it's presented. There is a lot of diversity, a lot of interpretation. As you look at the word Emmanuel, El is the root word. As you look at Israel, El is the root word, and El was the god of the Canaanites. It's all very, very diverse, as Rowena pointed out. For those of you who would wish, please join me in a call to worship. We would read it together. Those of you who wish. Rejoice, friends, and come in. Come into this place which we make holy by our presence. Let us come in here with all our vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes, imperfect love and perfect trust. For here we need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who we are and who we are called to be. Come into this place where we can touch and be touched, heal and be healed, forgive and forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this place. Together, we make it a holy place. And for those of you who wish, joining me in a morning prayer, kindle in us, most holy God, the flame of love that never ceases, that it may burn in us, giving us hope to others. May we shine forever in your temple, set alight by your eternal grace. Amen. Our first reading today is being read by Judy Homer. And Judy, if you would.
Labat Gola.
It was still talking.
Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Go ahead, Judy.
Hora Labat Gola. Hora to a daughter of the exile. Hannah Sanesh. Translated from the Hebrew by Eli Lessem. A hora, roaring, tempestuous, blazing around me with the mystery of rhythm, gladdening, forging, it tugs at my body and heart. The foot marches, the back quivers, the song is ignited, a searing chorus, dance and song, a wordless prayer. Hail to the future, hail to creation. But then a figure flutters before my eyes. My arm has escaped my friend's embrace. My heart spurns the tempestuous singing. Far and near it consumes me whole. Blue eyes, such a bewildered glance, a sad silence and a stubborn mouth. The stillness grows in me. I remain standing, alone in a crowd of 100, she and I.
And Bobby Vance is going to share a little bit of this about Kwanzaa this morning.
Good morning, all souls. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Okay.
good morning.
Well, actually, since I am talking about Kwanzaa this morning, and let me just say that I wish I had Rowena's linguistic skills. I cannot talk that fast, and I cannot cram all of that wealth of information that she did in her 3 minutes. So what you're going to get this morning in my limited time is a slower version of whatever I can share with you about Kwanzaa. Actually, it's going to be a taste. You wait until next year. You'll really get the good stuff. But I'm just going to give you a taste. And let me say the first thing. Kwanzaa is Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa. With all of the local dialects and accents we have in our country, it does sound like Kawanza, but it's Kwanzaa, okay? And it's a Yoruba derived word, which is basically stands for the first fruits. Kwanzaa, even though it's added to the pantheon of our holiday celebrations, is not really a religious holiday. It's more of a cultural holiday. Now, it was actually started in the year 1966. I look at the group in front of me, and we've got quite a few of us who were around in 1966, okay? A few weren't, but we've got a good, so 1966, AstroTurf was created. Best Buy started. Doritos came out. Fresca. Quaker Instant Oatmeal. And for you, Kenneth, they said in Houston, Texas, this man named Marcel D. Rutter received the first artificial heart. And for you, Pat Sullivan, 1966 was the great New York City transit strike. I can imagine. You remember Mike Quill, New York City transit strike. And also 1966, they broke the ground for the World Trade Center, which was something that we had never seen built before. 1966 also, was a year that the cities were burning. In the United States of America, there were, they call them insurrections, they call them riots, they call them uprisings, but cities were literally burning, police department, National Guards. And you remember, besides all of the Vietnam protests, the cities were burning. The reason the cities were burning is because people of color escaped from the Jim Crow South. They came to the North with the promise of the civil rights movement. They were basically herded because they could not move anywhere they wanted to move. They were literally government contracts that forbade them from buying properties in a lot of the suburbs, in all of the suburbs, actually. They were herded in the city, which became like townships in Soweto, South Africa. I know this personally because in 1966, while I was having fun with my friends and enjoying, at the same time, I knew the boundaries that I lived in Brooklyn were the only places I could safely go. And there were places in New York, a lot of places that I simply couldn't go. If I got off the subway and walked in those streets, literally lights would go on in the houses. People would come out on their porch and you could literally be ran out of the neighborhood. That was 1966. And because the cities were burning, a lot of people were looking for answers. Kwanzaa was created simply as a way of giving people who didn't seem to have a lot of hope a connection with where they came from. Kwanzaa is a cultural festival which relates to Africa, where people of color came from. It is a 7-day celebration. It has a lot of ritual. It has a menorah-like, it's called the Kanara. I won't have time next year. I'll be able to explain. But the importance of this is a truly American-born holiday. It was born out of pain and suffering. We should all know about it. And it is more inclusive today than it was when it was created. Because if you live, especially if you live in a city, if you see a Kwanzaa celebration, it is welcoming to all people to come, to celebrate, to share. That's all I have time for, but wait until the next time. Thank you,
Bobby. Wow, 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 wow. Judy, if you would.
Yes. I have the pleasure of reading this beautiful poem written by Andrea Hawkins-Kamper. It's called If, Letting Justice Flow Down the Mountain. For Hannah S. If I am the matchhead, I am creation compressed, a temporal anomaly breathing potentially through a straw filled with entropy. If I am the matchbox, this is Paladin's tomb, where convenient morality dies, screaming, quote, thoughts and prayers, end quote, to all who fall over the canyon's edge. If I am the matchstick, I am a force, doublé and casual actor, the holy union of then and was in the now, igniting the birth of a phoenix, transforming justice from the ashes. Then we must be the flame passion, forged into harder than steel determination, repairing the legacies of our history and the future of our children. Blessed is the flame consuming the work, healing the pluribus corpus unus.
So there is joy in the middle spaces. Much like my love for Lent over the actual holiday of Easter, I prefer the season of Advent over the holiday of Christmas. The waiting, the anticipation, the ritual, the pageantry. And this was a minority opinion as I grew up in the Methodist Church. It's also one I would imagine that isn't that far off from the current zeitgeist. What I enjoy most about these seasons of the in-between is the exploration. It's the communal moments that bind us together, that form us and shape us into something better, something greater than we were before. Those moments of joy when we come together, those sometimes when we make something real, sometimes when we find something real, sometimes when something unexpected happens, whether it's a bonus check, a gift card, a present from a long distant relative. And often, at least for me, that joy comes from something intangible. It's the stuff you can't physically touch, yet touches us. Things like a parking meter prepaid by a stranger, a kind word exchanged between distant friends, or a meal split and shared among hungry. In that first reading today, Hannah Senesh's poem had these two delicious lines: dance and song, a wordless prayer, hail to the future, hail to creation. I don't know if you heard it, but I did. The joy that is there, that absolute, pure, unbridled joy, a complete abandonment in the moment to joy. It's the joy that overwhelms you and leaves you gasping for air, water, and even gravity itself. And as good as that poem is, Hannah has another poem for which she is more famous. And it's the last poem she is known to have written. It is far less joyful, but it speaks to the reality of the times in which she lived, fought, and died in. Blessed is the match consumed in kindling flame. Blessed is the flame that burns in the secret fastness of the heart. Blessed is the heart that with the strength to stop its beating for honor's sake. Blessed is the match consumed in kindling flame. I wrote my poem as an answer to that one, finding that they were bookends, that where there was self-effacing joy and soul-determined grief, there could also be community action to honor the memory of a flame that burned so brightly. Different sides of the same coin, because as Hannah felt one, she felt the other. That is true for us as well. In my last share, I told you all about my friend Maria and the speakeasy / thrift store she used to own in Elgin, Illinois. It would be the place where I acquired that almost certainly a fire hazard string of 1970s C9 outdoor Christmas lights. Now, in the words of Paul Harvey, here's the rest of that story. No, I did not burn down my house. Maria and I first met when we were both exhibitors in the Side Street Studio Arts Something Wicked show in October of 2015. She had brought two of her enormous tile mosaic doors. Both of these doors depicted legends of the old Hollywood scream scene. I had brought a calligraphy piece entitled The Last Will and Testament, purporting to be the recovered relic of a vampire hunter. Both pieces made quite a stir, as we were the only mixed media artists in a sea of illustrators. Our conversation that night was shaky and abrupt. Maria was popular. She had a crew, as you would expect from an accomplished artist. I was somewhat newer to the scene, and my crew consisted of my spouse and my kid, who had not finished their submission on time. So, yeah. However, the spark between Maria and I had been laid. A few weeks later, we crossed paths again at an estate sale. I was hunting vintage Catholic saint statues for art reasons, and she was hunting thrift store stock. These was what I was hunting. We ended up talking for nearly 3 hours and then meeting back up at her thrift store a couple of weeks later. And our friendship was born. And for several years, my home studio was overrun in those vintage plastic Catholic saint statues. And I often think about Maria during Advent, mostly because of how long and through how much our friendship has endured. We are wildly different people. And we are people who have lived wildly different lives. But the intersection of a couple of common joys was enough for us to build a lasting, mutually beneficial relationship. And it is, in the middle of it all, a space of joy. More than that, though, our friendship is and remains a source of hope. And it's hope, like the kid who is remaining nameless in the story to protect my innocence, who was given an assignment in a high school chamber band composition to rearrange a popular hymn into a simple 4-part ensemble. Now, this kid played euphonium, which is, if you don't know what it is, it's somewhere between a tuba and a trombone. And this kid, who is not me, got it, was tired of getting looks from their mother, not me, in church. So this kid, not me, did a thing. This kid, not me, arranged the third Sunday of Advent hymn, O Come, Emmanuel, into a minor key, 4-part, low brass ensemble with a French horn lead, and translated the lyrics into Latin. Thank you, Chip Davis of Mannheim Steamroller, for sparking my enduring love of Latin to this day. I, not me, so definitely not me, thought it was brilliant, and I, not me, was ecstatic. And while I got an A for the work, I, not me, was advised that all I did was likely turn the clock backward 500 years on contemporary composition. I was not as an original thinker or composer as I had thought, but while I still sing the Latin lyrics and or others' English lyrics whenever I can, I do so because it brings me joy.
Okay.
And that is what this third Sunday in Advent is all about. It's about joy. Now, the Christian scriptures are full of texts about the importance of this Sunday, the emotions we might experience knowing the wait for the prophet is soon to be complete. And it is a joy, though, which, if I'm being honest, much must spread beyond just this one thing or just this one day. And it must become integral to who we are, because if it is a joy that focuses only on that one thing, bloody hell, we've missed the point. Yes, we may be joyful on this Sunday or joyful on other days, but the weight of being joyful shouldn't be carried alone. And it is best to be carried in community. The holidays are hard for many, with the memories of lost loved ones, the social pressures, and the strain of or broken family ties too much to bear. And if you find yourself in those places where joy is too hard to find and hope is scarce, please remember you are not alone. All Souls is our community, and we are here for each other. So in the beauty and the stillness of the Advent Vigil we all keep in our own way, may peace be in your heart, joy in your movement, faith in your breathing, and hope in your presence. Let all be a wordless prayer of joyful dance and song, hailing the future and hailing creation. Selah.
John Dominic Crossan suggested that we have got it all wrong in concentrating on Jesus's Last Supper. Not only do we not understand what the Last Supper was it a Passover meal? And by the way, if it was a Passover meal, get what was missing? It was a Passover meal. Kids would have been there. Dogs and cats would have been there. Ladies would have been there. Teenagers would have been there. Would have been everybody. It would have been a mess. That's what Passover meals are. If it was in the upper room, it was not a meal like Leonardo da Vinci had at a big table. In fact, it would have been in a very, very poor place in which the table was about that far off the ground and people reclined around the table on pillows. Whatever it was, Dominic Crossan suggests, why did we concentrate on a final meal when we need to concentrate on the other meals that Jesus had? And this, I guess, is where All Souls joins the minority in suggesting, yes, you could hear the Jesus story a number of ways. After Jesus dies and there is a great war between Judea and the rest of the Roman Empire, most of his followers will be killed. They'll be killed by the rebels because they were not onward Christian soldiers marching along to war. They were not killed by the Romans because they wouldn't acknowledge the emperor as their God. And so the Jesus story no longer has its Jewish roots. And it'll be heard by people who just said that can't have been a simple carpenter. What is wrong with you people? It had to be something more. You can't just have bread and cup. It had to be holy things. And therefore, holy things have to have set aside and holy smoke, literally, and fire and unique things you wear in dark spaces. And it became the other. Dominic Crossan said, do you think Jesus would have understood any of this himself? Probably not. What he did understand was the tradition of having bread, simple flat bread, and a simple cup of watered down wine because you couldn't trust the water. And you reached across the aisle, the table, wherever you were, and did you see who Jesus had broken bread with? He would have been fired today by most Christian churches. You hear the phrase all the time in the New Testament, publicans and sinners. That's us. He had meals with everybody. You should really pay attention to the people that gets glossed over, is the famous phrase, glossed over. Samaritans, that's a no-no. Tax collectors, that's even worse. I mean, you should see the panoply of people he had broke bread with. It was an absolute outrage. And so at All Souls, we honor that outrage. We honor the affirmation that you count. You are. So this is not a holy meal with incense. I understand that. We did it on All Souls. We go the other route. We claim the route of simple bread, simple cup, affirming and welcoming everyone. And while we're here on Zoom, we can't do that literally in person, but we can do that spiritually across the spaces, knowing that everyone here is welcome. Everyone is affirmed. All the good, the bad, the mashups we do every day, we are still affirmed and loved and cared for. And so we break bread symbolically each time, welcoming and affirming, because we know down deep that as Jesus was with publicans and sinners, that's who we are. That's what we're about. That's who we care for. And then we borrow words that come from a secular source, but it kind of sums up who and what we are. Please repeat after me if you would. Promise me you'll remember. You are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. God didn't promise days without pain, laughter without sorrows, sun without rain. But the divine did promise strength for the day, comfort for the tears, and light for the way. And Luca Bloom, you are right. Don't be afraid of the light. A final blessing, and then stay for a moment afterwards if you would. And now may the road rise to meet you, and may the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, and may the rains fall softly upon your fields. And when we meet again, may the divine in me greet and embrace the divine in you. Go and be in peace. Amen. I want to thank you all so much. I want to thank you, Bobby Vance, so much, and Rowena for keeping it alive and real and all there is. And Andrea, I'm not allowed to give you a hug across the screen. Your wife will shoot me, and so will mine. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for reading Judy. Bobby and Judy are on next week, too. Thank you, Digit Grimmy, Maureen and Felix and Mary Grimmy, mother of Digit, Pat Care, Pat Sullivan, Gail and Tom, good morning. Pam, good morning. Barbara Young, Amelia, Cindy and Larry Deach, Sarah, Chris Diaz, Alan and Eddie from now in Washington, Danny Sorkin, Cecilia Alessandro down the street, and Gary Messier was here too as well. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. 2 services next week. 2 services, one at 11 o'clock Zoom, and it will be full of music and a very strange share about the light. And then we have a wonderful, very old-fashioned format of lessons and carols. As a hybrid service at 6:30 at Aureli's. Blessings to you all. Be in touch with me if you need me for anything this week. We'll be in touch with you. Connection still meets on Thursdays. We hope to see you if you need to be there. Blessings and peace and love.
And to you, Ken.